Strategy games are like food in North Korea. Very rare, but very plentiful at the top, and it's the same thing with strategy games. We have Paradox, Civ, and Total War games making up a large part of the strategic market, but today we're going to be talking about 5 new strategy games coming out in 2022 that will allow you to roleplay a smart, strong leader, leading his people to greatness, even though you all would probably crash and fail your non-computer in your mother's basement's real-life empires. Not me though, because I'm built different. These 5 games are ones I'm excited for, so let me know if you want me to play them on my channel, and which ones you are specifically hyped for, and let's take a moment to praise the almighty algorithm by giving me likes and subscribes if you do enjoy, and let's start the video. The first game we're going to be talking about is going to have a lot of you excited, and that is Victoria 3. The Twitter page has been hyping it up harder than Raid Shadow Legends hypes up their whale-laden terrible game. It's pretty much a sequel to Vicky 2 with some unique twists. As always, it's much more focused on diplomacy and economy, whereas EU4 is more on exploration and colonization, and Hoi 4 is all about that combat. This is based in 1836 to 1936, so the Wereaboos are creaming at the thought of winning World War I with their beloved Kaiser. The map at this stage kind of looks worse than CK3 to be honest, but it is still a work in project, and all the development diaries with all the different methods, you got these resources, you got trades. The one thing that is kind of weird in my opinion is the fact that you can't really do anything with wars. Like, you can declare war, but you really have, almost no control in it, and it really depends on how you set up for war, rather than, micromanaging or anything like that. You have to, again, make sure your economy is sustainable, make sure you have enough resources for the war, and I kind of like it, honestly. It might be a little boring if it comes out, but we'll have to see. It does seem to be the most complex Paradox game to date, which is just like saying Albert Einstein's probably one of the smartest people to ever live. Lots of competition at the top. And again, it's a lot more economic than expansive. Again, Vicky 2, you were not really able to conquer the world in 10 years or something. It really is much more on the diplomatic efforts as well as the economy of the game, and combat really is an afterthought compared to that in true Vicky fashion. I'm kind of excited for this game for sure. I've never played Vicky 2, but with the way things have been going, honestly, it does seem like a breath of fresh air where you can instead let the military people handle the military and you work on making your country, no matter where it is, as strong as possible. The next game we're talking about is going to be the last Big Daddy North Korea Kim Jong-il type of strategy game, and that is Total War Warhammer 3. Now, the developers are milking this series harder than YouTubers milked the Paul brothers back in the 2018-2019 era, but it is still a very good and very fun game, one of, if not the most successful Total War series to date. Total War Warhammer 3 is a fantasy Total War focusing almost exclusively on military, where you go ahead and control stuff like goblins, elves, you can even be the mother of dragons, Game of Thrones style. But unlike that series, let's hope the Warhammer series doesn't nosedive in its final install like that Game of Thrones series. But reworked sieges based on the 7 different factions in the game. Each faction has their unique own siege layout as well as siege defense, which is really cool. There's also a new survival battle with waves of increasing in strength enemies where you have to hold a certain objective. I'm not really the biggest fan of those wave after waves type of games, but I could see why some people would be super excited for it. Not only that, but you could build platforms and artillery towers mid-battle, throwing in Julius Caesar's massive schlong building wall mid-battle into the actual game. Now, Mortal Empires is a really cool concept of a mega campaign that combines the maps and factions of both the first 2 games, as well as something in the future they've promised, where they'd also add in the 3rd game to that Mortal Empires mega campaign. Let's hope the AI is better and stops suiciding units into my fortified lines, because as always, we do not condone suicide on the Civ Lifer channel. But in all honesty, I'm very excited for the ending of the Warhammer saga. It's been great. I definitely enjoyed the second game more than the first in my opinion. But honestly, if they do make the AI better, if they do fix actually make the sieges and artillery towers and whatnot work, it is going to be a very good game. And one last thing, again, and ranged units in that game are all about elevation. It's not like the archers will always hit their target. They'll miss sometimes. And if you have better elevation, a better vantage point, you'll have a lot more of a chance of actually hitting than missing. And I kind of like that sort of RNG factor in Warhammer 3. And yeah, let's get into the next game. Our first strategy game that isn't part of an actual strategy game saga is Dune Spice Wars. No, it's not a colonial war in the South Pacific between the Japanese and the British. It's actually a cutthroat competition based on the politics and warfare in the Dune novels, which are honestly a pretty good fit for strategy games. The action will take place on a sort of circular map representing the world with the North Pole, and you'll also have the option to pick another random generated map. Also, you can be using, the worms are going to be a very massive problem in this game, just as they are in the books or TV show / movie. I don't know what that, I haven't watched whatever the medium is for that. But becoming the ruler of Dune can be accomplished in 3 ways. There's 3 victory types. Destroying your rivals outright, Geneva suggestioning them. Being declared governor using political maneuvering, the boring method. Or you could achieve a score-based hegemony victory, which varies from faction to faction. I really don't like this victory type things. I don't know how the game works exactly, but the political wins really aren't my favorite. Neither is a score-based victory, but maybe Dune will actually spice it up. Kill me. Spice will be, of course, the main resource and the primary way to get money. Its price will fluctuate over time, and you have the decision to decide how much is sold and how much you're going to stockpile to take advantage of future trades. I guess it really is about a colonial war in the South Pacific. The South Pacific was a desert, obviously. Espionage will be a very major system. It's kind of like EU4 with Civ elements in a way. It's not as complex or expansive in my opinion as EU4, but it's sort of a mix between both games. It's going to be really fun role-playing the Ottomans and cucking everyone in Europe out of the spice trade in this game. All in all, it's a pretty good different take on a strategy series. It is turn-based, and it really is less about combat kind of like Victoria. It's really more about just the spice wars in general and worrying about those worms who are going to suck out your butthole. The next game, we're going all the way back from the colonization EU4 style of game that Spice Wars is into the Company of Heroes 3, a World War II simulator. It's an RTS World War II game, which is kind of turn-based in a way, but Relic is using fellow Sega studio Amplitude's Game Together program, which means like Humankind, we're going to be able to play a lot of beta releases before the actual release date. You'll be able to fight it out in a campaign. This game is set across Italy and North Africa, where you'll get to conquer territory, get into skirmishes, fight bespoke battles. It's all about combat. They're throwing out the economy, diplomacy. We're at war, and you have to pick either the Axis or the Allies. With the Axis, you can really only pick the Germans. You can pick UK and US forces for the Allies, although in the campaign, you will just be playing the Allies. So, sad wearaboo noises. An Italian partisan-type group is something you can actually work with as the allies in a campaign. They're like a special faction, but you won't be commanding them like normal. Instead, you'll be able to use the campaign map to create traps, snatch up enemy intel, although you're going to have to do stuff like free the Italian partisans, help them out in a way. Essentially, they're just like spies, I guess, in a way. They'll be able to sabotage a lot, but it's something you do have to manage. You know, you can't treat them like shit, honestly. You gotta treat them like actual human beings. I know, hard for most people to do in the Second World War, but I think you've got it in you. It's turn-based combat and takes place on huge maps, which is kind of like Total War in a way. I am kind of excited for this game. Aside from Hearts of Iron, there hasn't really been any other World War II strategy game, and this is something I'm really excited for. As you take more territory, you'll be able to get resources that you can spend on troops. Each little bit of territory also gives you something, though taking advantage of it means you'll need to increase your supply lines. Supply lines are a very important part in this game. It's pretty much hoi for no step back all over again. With an airbase under your command, for example, you can send planes, bombing runs, scout missions, drop troops behind enemy lines. Whereas with ships, you can actually transport troops from afar, bombard enemies from the coast, and engage in some nice naval battles. Destruction is kind of a mainstay of the series, with Company of Heroes 3 really dialing up that system. Now the destruction system is sort of persistent, so like if masonry falls after like a plane bombs something, you'll be able to use that as cover, which is really, really cool. So as you're doing the actual battle, the entire scenario will just completely change, and you might just be out in the open, pants down, penis out, but then, the masonry falls down and you have something to cover behind, which is pretty dope. The next game is exactly what happens when the Civ 6 AI settles within 10 tiles of me, and that is diplomacy is not an option. It's an early access Bannerlord type of game with everything except the campaign completed, so it's going to be a lot farther ahead than actual early release games. It's pretty much a war in a medieval landscape. You're kind of a king who's sick of partying and just farming and doing economic stuff. Ugh. And it's really based on a war diplomacy type of systems. They have really cool physics laws, which means you actually need good elevation for ranged units. It's just you're not going to be able to just, tell your archers to attack, and then somehow they're throwing their arrows over 5 mountains and pinning a fly's wings to the stump of a tree. Everything from food, starvation, diseases, as well as corpses needing to be hauled away are in the game. So it's a lot more hardcore than something like Civ. It really just seems very fun, and I'm definitely trying this game out for sure. Magic is also a part of it, which could be very helpful if you develop and invest in it. It's kind of like Age of Empires 4 in a way, with magic and a kind of more fun Civ 6y graphics design. You have pretty much freedom to do whatever it is you want. It's kind of like a sandbox game. Full tech tree, and as well as a large map to explore and conquer, definitely has me feeling this game, and I definitely will pick it up when it comes out. Your economy does need to be managed, or else you'll have starving soldiers and no wood for defenses and buildings, so it does have economy that you do have to manage, like most strategy games. All in all, I am very excited for this game, probably the most if I'm being honest, although I've never really played Vicky 2 before, so who knows, that might end up being my best game. In any case, let's go ahead and talk about the last game. The final game we are going to be taking a look at is Songs of Conquest. It's sort of a 90s classic turn-based strategy game where you pick one of 4 factions, even got some goblins in there, that's pretty cool. You essentially build up your empire with resource management, as well as, depending on what faction you choose, you'll have access to new abilities, units, buildings, and whatnot. It really takes in a combined arms tactic approach. Unlike Civ, where you can only build really swordsmen in the early game, or there's a meta, they really are trying to actually have multiple units in one army, and if you strike the right balance, you will have a massive advantage. It's kind of like a fantasy Lord of the Rings style Middle-earth type of Conquest game. You also get unique bard songs for every victory path you do end up completing, and it really has that late 90s, early 2000s strategy game feel, which might be nostalgic for a lot of people. You'll be able to adventure, cross maps, kill enemies, grab loot, building an empire, whether you use brute force, a mix of magic, or diplomacy. There are a lot of paths you can take to conquering the world. The graphics really are kind of nice, honestly, a little nostalgic in a way, old school RuneScape type of beat. Being able to wage wars as well allows a deep combat system. You're able to just mix and match whatever customization you want, with different spells, damage potential, and unit subtypes. The 4 factions are Arleon, Beria, Reyna, and Barony of Loth. Arleon is pretty much the rest of the empire that got absolutely goat-seed by the baronies. The Beria pretty much threw off the empire and allied with Harima to form independent merchant states. They're pretty much the Arabs in this game. Reyna is sort of these weird, mystical, Aztec type of guys, although they're pretty much snakes, kind of. Think of the Argonians in Elder Scrolls. Barony of Loth is just the undead, pretty much, the obvious undead faction you're going to get in every game. You'll be able to bring back the dead, which is pretty cool. It has a really nice multiplayer aspect, which will give it an advantage, I think, over regular strategy games, as well as a really nice level editor as well. It also looks like a pretty fun game. Honestly, it might not be the game for me, but I will definitely be checking it out. And yeah, let me know down below which of these games you think are your favorite, any other games I've missed, and as always, like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this game. Trying to get 17,000 by the end of December, which is, well, it's the next 6 hours, so I would appreciate all the help I can get. And without further ado, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.